Hello everyone and welcome to the U.S. Capitol building where we're honored to sit down for our first ever YouTube interview with Speaker of the House, John Boehner. Mr. Speaker, welcome to YouTube.
Glad to be here.
We got a lot of questions from people online, text and video. They voted on their favorites. We're going to get to as many as we can today. And let's start out with an issue that's been on the top of your agenda almost since you took office, the budget and the budget deficit. This week, presumably, you'll be voting on a $4 billion cut that will get the government through the middle of March. And a lot of the freshman GOP lawmakers have suggested that around $61 billion could be cut this year. Tony from Indiana asks, let's get to our first, here we go. So, you cut $61 billion from the federal budget. Thank you. However, I did the math, and it's like paying $17.61 against a credit card debt of around $50K. The monthly interest is about $750. What's the plan to get truly serious about this?
Well, we've been in the majority now for all of 7 weeks, and this is the first big step. We've got to come to an agreement with the Senate on a long-term plan to fund the government through September 30th. But here in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll begin to unveil our budget for the next fiscal year. The president had an opportunity with his budget to take recommendations from his own deficit reduction commission, but he did none. We will not walk away from the big issues that face our country. We've got to deal with the big entitlement programs because that's where the money is. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. It wouldn't affect anyone over 54 years of age, but for younger Americans, they want us to deal with this problem because the programs are unsustainable and unaffordable.
You know, a lot of people wrote in with their suggestions on programs that they would like to see cut or they'd like to hear your feedback on. Let's go through sort of a YouTube speed round where we'll go through a bunch of cuts people suggested. You say keep it or cut it.
All right.
And maybe just a few sentences as to why you think that. The first one's a video.
My name's Jacqueline Payne. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and my question is, why, when the United States already has an inferior education system, does the federal government cut Pell Grants and other education funds in order to save money for the budget, in order to achieve budget cuts?
So education.
We made some changes to the Pell Grant program in our continuing resolution. In the president's budget submission, he made some changes to the Pell Grant program. We have to remember, we're broke. We want these programs to work, but they have to be affordable. And I think the changes the president suggested and the kind of changes we've made would be in the reasonable common sense area.
So education, cut it, or at least cut some of it, cut some of the funding that's out there.
Well, there were some extra funds given in to Pell Grants on a temporary basis. That temporary time is up, and frankly, we think having a reasonable amount of money to help students get through college is the right thing to do. But again, what's the reasonable number?
Great. Next one, keep it or cut it. This one's from a citizen in Arkansas. I think it's great that we're cutting spending, but why not trim the defense budget? Why do we need 50,000 troops in Germany? Why do we need troops in over 100 countries?
Well, I think every agency of the federal government has waste, and we got to go find it. But when it comes to the defense budget, we need to understand, while we ought to be finding waste there, our number one obligation to our citizens is to keep Americans safe. That's why we have a strong defense. That's why we have troops around the world to help make sure that Americans are safe here and abroad.
Next one, keep it or cut it, Mr. Speaker. Will you consider ending farm subsidies, ethanol subsidies, and other pet projects as part of your fiscal trimming? This comes from Steve in our heartland in Nebraska.
Yes.
Perfect. Quick answer to keep it or cut it. Let's go to the next one. With everyday Americans giving up portions of their paychecks to keep their jobs and paying bigger insurance premiums, shouldn't Congress do the same? Cut your own pay and pay your own insurance. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We got this question from a lot of people. This one's from Mary in Michigan.
The first act that we took in this new Congress was to cut our own budgets 5%, our leadership budgets 5%, committee budgets 5%. I pay $435 a month for my portion of my health care. Just like any other Americans paying more and more of the cost of their health insurance.
It's a symbolic thing, but I think a lot of people are concerned about it.
Oh, I understand. But I happened to look at my pay stub for this month. And when I realized I was getting half of my check because of taxes, my contributions to Social Security, my contributions to my 401k, my contributions to our pension plan, Congress is doing its share.
Let's move to the last keep it or cut it question, Mr. Speaker. When are you going to end the subsidies to oil companies? They're doing fine without the taxpayers' money. This comes from a user down in Florida.
Well, subsidies to oil companies, that's, in some people's minds, it may seem that. What this question really is asking, why don't we raise taxes? Listen, we don't want to be raising taxes on the very people that we expect to be out there looking for more oil and gas to help fuel our economy. If you're going to have a growing economy, you need more energy. And right now what we really need is an all-of-the-above energy plan that expands our oil and gas drilling that we can do in an environmentally safe way. We need more green energy. We need clean coal technology. We need more nuclear energy. We really need to do all of the above if we're going to put America on a solid foundation for economic growth in the future.
Let's move away from keep it or cut it and go to an issue that's been in the headlines a lot the past few weeks, the protests in Wisconsin over Governor Scott Walker's stance on collective bargaining, protests in your own home state of Ohio as well. This question is from a user, I believe, in Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, my question for you is, with the current state of the economy and of jobs, will you move in the House of Representatives the National Right to Work Act?
We should tell our viewers who don't know the National Right to Work Act, it's an act that essentially says you have the right to work even if you don't join a union.
Well, listen, this has been an issue of long standing around here. In Ohio, where I'm from, it's part of our Constitution. And I don't know what Ohio would do with this. I believe that people have the right to collectively bargain. But I think it should be a fair process for both sides. And what happens in some of these states, the law is written in the favor of one party or the other. And so I do think that these governors have big decisions they have to make. They're going to have to make them on their own. But I don't believe that there's sufficient support in the House today to have a national right.
So you don't believe it's a national right? You think states should deal with the issue?
That's where it's been for the last 70 years, and I think that's the appropriate place for it.
Let's move on to a question. We were talking about energy a moment ago. A question came in from an owner of an oil field in Louisiana. This is Thomas Clements.
Speaker Boehner, with all the problems surrounding the budget deficit, why does the president continue to stall the economic lifeline of oil and gas production in the Gulf, and then propose drastic tax increases for the U.S. companies developing these supplies? Are energy workers second-class citizens, and when can I go back to work?
Well, you know, one of your earlier questions wanted to tax this man who obviously doesn't want his taxes to go up. I'm pleased that the president yesterday and the Interior Department released the first permit for deep water drilling in the Gulf of Mexico since the spill last summer.
Is that enough?
It's a start. But when you look at the amount of drilling that could go on, it's vastly more than what the government will allow. Whether it's deep offshore drilling, whether it's drilling in the Intermountain West, there are permits on top of permits sitting down at the Interior Department that ought to be released. We can develop our energy resources in a way that is environmentally responsible. And the sooner we do it, the more secure America will be, and the less amount of money we'll be shipping overseas to the Middle East to people who will use that money against us.
The number one video question, Mr. Speaker, came from Luis in Los Angeles.
Hello, Mr. Boehner. How's it going? My name is Luis. My question is, what are your plans with immigration, such as CIR, but most importantly, the DREAM Act that fell last year in the Senate, of course? As leader, are you willing to be a leader, work with the president, and push this issue forward? We need a lot of Republican support, and many others will benefit from this, like myself. And we want to contribute back to this country and go to school, get educated, or some of us want to join the military and, like I said, contribute to this country and become the best there is. Thank you. I would love to hear your answer, sir. Have a great day.
Well, listen, America's been the biggest melting pot in the history of the earth. You know, my family come from German immigrants, and we're going to continue to be the biggest melting pot on earth. But we need to do it legally. And I think the American people expect that we ought to have real immigration reform. But they're not really willing to go there until they are convinced that we can secure our borders and enforce our laws. And I think once we're able to demonstrate to the American people that we can, in fact, protect our borders and secure them and enforce the law, once we get those two obstacles out of the way, then I think we can begin to look at how do we deal with this problem in a fair, honest way.
But the DREAM Act in particular is about children of immigrants becoming citizens. It sounds like you're saying you're not ready to go there.
It's about children of illegal immigrants being able to go to college with in-state fees.
Right.
And this is a part of an overall immigration, a comprehensive immigration plan.
Do you support it, the DREAM Act?
Not in and of itself. I just think that providing extra benefits to people who are here illegally is against the law, and it's wrong. And while I have a lot of compassion for the fact that it's not their fault that their parents came here and they were born somewhere else, you can't reward people who have violated the law.
You know, it wasn't a category that we had available to the public, but the number one question of any question that came in was about government transparency, and it's a text question. Most votes of any question. Would you support a law requiring all meetings between elected officials and lobbyists to be video recorded and made available to the public through the internet? Tough question.
I never really thought about whether they should be video, but understand, I'm lobbied all day, every day by people who may be registered lobbyists, ordinary citizens. I could be at a restaurant. I could be stranded on a street corner. I get lobbied by everyone. Now, I think it would be a little difficult to film all of those.
What about just the registered meetings of lobbyists here in the Capitol Hill?
I don't, listen, at the end of the day, I'm responsible for how I vote. I got a lot of people from a lot of different points of view who lobby me. And frankly, lobbyists help provide a service to every elected official, because if there's any issue of any significance, you'll hear from lobbyists on both sides of the issue. Because you can't ever read the words on a sheet of paper and understand who's doing what to who. But by the time you hear from lobbyists on both sides of an issue, you've got a pretty good idea of what the bill in front of you will really do. Then you can make an informed decision.
So let the vote speak, and then
let the vote speak.
As much about video. Let's move to a question from New Jersey. This is an interesting one.
My name is William A. Burkhart. I live in Burrell, New Jersey. I have a question for Speaker Boehner. My question is this: why can't we do the same as Franklin Roosevelt did in the 30s and put all these people that are on unemployment into a works progress administration like he did? Period.
May have some merit. I mean, I know what happened in the 30s. They did take people who were on unemployment. This is really before unemployment started. And we had the Civilian Conservation Corps. We had the WPA. There were places that they put these people to work to build infrastructure projects around the country. Now, I'm sure that some union workers who do these projects for pay may not think it was such a great idea, but I think it's worthy of consideration.
Worth looking into. Mr. Speaker, our last question is on an issue that you spent a lot of the last year fighting: health care. This question is from Jason.
Speaker Boehner, if the Affordable Care Act is repealed or not funded, how will the United States government address the needs of those who cannot afford health insurance? Thanks.
Well, we in the Congress instructed all of our committees to come back after we repealed Obamacare with give us the plans for how we bring down the cost of health insurance. If we made health insurance more affordable, a lot more Americans would have easier access to it. And while there are some portions of Obamacare that we do in fact agree with, keeping young adults on their parents' policies to age 26, making sure that people can buy health insurance across state lines, there are a lot of things that we can do to bring down the cost of health insurance, including medical malpractice reform. And while that might bring down the cost of insurance premiums for doctors, it's the defensive medicine they practice to prevent themselves from being sued that really drives up the cost of health care. So we believe that there are common sense steps that we can work on together that'll bring down the cost of health insurance.
Mr. Speaker, thanks for taking the time to answer these questions. We hope to see you on YouTube again real soon.
Thank you. It was great.